you go to cafes and you look across and you see the man sitting there in the corner with the two kids in the wimpy bar or whatever, and you can just tell that that's that poor sod who's seeing his kids for the weekend and he's got to take them out somewhere, he's got to make them happy. And that is the trouble when you're in that situation. You're trying so hard to make them happy that it often doesn't work. You know, you just having the kids and trying to make them happy and trying to give them all the things to do. Sometimes they just want to sit and watch the telly.
They and I hate having to cram 2 weeks worth of time into one weekend. I'm absolutely exhausted at the end of it.
In many cases, this so-called contact, this disgraceful notion and impertinent language of access between father and child will not involve an overnight stay. After their day out with Dad, he's expected to get the children back to the mother's home in time for dinner. The terror of being that 5 minutes late can often mean a lawyer's letter chastising your parenting and threatening further withdrawal of your child. Not only is this heartbreaking, but more importantly, it causes immediate, long-term psychological damage to their children.
The evening rituals are really very important emotionally, and being able to participate in getting the child bathed and reading them stories and snuggling them to sleep in bed. Those are really precious moments for a parent and for a child. They're part of the crucial glue that keeps those relationships going. And if you cut a parent out of those really precious moments, you diminish the opportunities to have a rich, deep, warm relationship.
The thing specifically that almost drove me, properly insane.
Mm-hmm.
The smell of my children in the house, tucking them up, going in to just make sure they're all right, kissing them goodnight, bathing, the bedtime story, the cuddles, the hot chocolate. That really almost drove me insane, that had just gone like that.
Easter, I remember staying overnight, and for the first time I tucked him into bed, and it was pitiful, really. It really was. I had nothing, and I tucked him into bed, and they went off to sleep, and I just sat there and watched them all night. I just watched them asleep. I hadn't seen this for 6 months, and been in this part of their life for 6 months. Tucking them up into bed and singing. My son was 10 by then, but my daughter was only 6. And I just remember sitting there in this squalid little bedsit, looking at them and thinking, wow.
The whole issue of how much contact fathers have with their children is bound up with this issue of their intimacy with the children and their keeping in touch as the children grow up. We've looked at a very large sample of families, around 10,000 families, in which we looked at mothers' reports of how well their children were doing after separation. And essentially the story was exactly the same, that the children who saw more of their fathers, who had frequent and regular contact with their fathers, who felt close and involved with their fathers, were doing much better in terms of adjustment. There's a completely clear, unequivocal pattern of results. So it's in everybody's interest, I think, for fathers to be being a parent, even if they're on their own.
What's important is the continuation of the relationship and preserving that stability.
So if that is the norm for those children, moving between their dads, they're home with their dad, they're home with their mum, that is as stable psychologically for them as any other domestic device.
Well, and it doesn't have to have been the norm for the children. What's important is that the norm was that they had relationships with both parents. And it's preserving those relationships that's important. And I would argue that that's an issue of children's rights.
The more family that a child's got in their lives, the more family they see, and the more you tell that child, oh, you're wonderful, what a beautiful girl, what a handsome little boy, how clever you are, you're going to be top of the class. The more you tell a child that, they will grow and have confidence and they'll feel stable and they'll grow up being a better person for that.
The harm that this outdated, defunct family law causes to children, their fathers, and the extent of families cannot be underestimated. Fractured families, scarred children, distraught grandparents. What have we become that we allow this system to continue when we know the damage that it's doing? It breaks our hearts, destroys our children, it's ruinous for society, it makes the culture vulgar and perverse, it costs a fortune, and it flies in the face of everything we know as humans, that children love both of their parents, and in turn, both of their parents love them.
Life is empty and quiet. And all those times when you go, God, just give me an afternoon breathing space, which most parents know. I actually long for the mess and the chaos and all the things that go with it.
The family justice system at its best will transform ordinary fathers into visiting MacDads. But at its worst, the system and those who run it will cut the ordinary father out of family life entirely. Based on nothing more than outdated social stereotypes, and despite everything that child experts say, the courts have become instruments of political social policy by insisting that the interests of the child are bound up in the best interests of the mother. So if you're a man, why have children if they're going to be taken from you upon separation? Why get married if for the rest of your life you become not much more than a wage slave, simply in order to see your child a few minutes a year? I suspect that if the law were as tilted towards men as it is now to women, we would behave in the same way. So it's little wonder that many women are tempted to abuse the system, all the while it works in their favour.
I had one mother who said to me, tell him, give me the money and he can have contact.
I mean, you're in front of this woman who's saying, he can see the kids if he gives me money. I mean, do you not just go, you fucking bitch?
Well, the problem is that when you're actually acting with someone, you probably think
I would. I'd be a crap lawyer.
You think, well, this is the thing, because when you're acting with someone, there are boundaries that limits what you can say. You can say, well, basically, I don't want to work for you anymore, because I mean, if you're not going to take the advice.
But I mean, internally, does your soul not wither?
Well, you do. This is why it's a thankless task, and that's why I don't want to actually work in that environment.
I equally think it's human, her reaction. The law is allowing her to do this.
Women litigants are becoming, or have become, adept at manipulating the system, and the system is capable of being manipulated. And if someone is implacably hostile and simply won't give contact and brainwashes the child against the father, then there's very little one can do.
The judge makes an order for contact, the mother disobeys. What can the judge do? He can fine the mother or send her to prison. Now, typically she's got no money, so the fine isn't a possibility. So, to send her to prison, what does that do for the children?
The government is saying it will extend powers for judges beyond imprisonment. And the reason they're doing that is because now the mantra is, if you put the mother in jail, how is that in the interest of the child? Well, it's in the interest of the child that when she gets out, she won't do it again. But the best this government can come up with, and this really does show the lack of intellectual rigour, the lack of imagination behind this claptrap, frankly, is that if a mother prevents contact, she might be made to pay the dad's expenses if he's booked a holiday. He doesn't want a fucking holiday. He wants to hold his child.